Eun-suk is a judge of highest integrity. She saw the picture of In-jun when reading the documents in a case. Suddenly, she trembled all over and failed to control her emotions. She then fell to the floor in a faint. Turns out she lost her child because of these two evils' pranks. 5 years ago, these two evil grade schoolers were like a bundle of mischief. They daily came up to the rooftop and proved the force of gravity by dropping bricks. Their stupid prank took a boy's life. They made absurd statements at the trial. However, Judge Gun-hee didn't consider the kids' hyperactivity a guilty act. Minors under the age of 14 cannot be convicted of a crime in South Korea. This is to help misguided children address their mistakes and get better. The short trial claimed they were innocent. Those two little devils walked out of the courtroom with a sly smile. They blatantly walked past the mother with a defying behavior. The husband comforted his crying wife. This is life. Law gives minors a chance to right their mistakes and change themselves. The indignant wife tried to hold back her tears, helplessly looking at the escaping inhuman guys. It's unfair to the families of the ill-fated victims. Can those minors eat humble pie when society wraps them up in cotton wool? It's nearly non-existent because truth is so easy to change in such society. 5 years later, the two evils continued doing things against code of behavior. The jerks spiked a girl's drink to get her blacked out. He and other 4 sexually harassed her in a quiet empty corner. It wasn't until the next morning that a worker passed by and found an unconscious girl, in the state of the altogether with a mass of bruises. Luckily, the worker promptly called the police and saved her life. Seola was giving testimony at the police station. She had a vague collection of what happened last night, that 3 guys abused her after they spiked her drink. When the incident was on the news, netizens sneered and mocked at her with harsh words. Under pretense of there's no smoke without fire, they blamed the victim. Their harsh words gave Seola mental fatigue. As a result, she wanted to take her own life. Fortunately, her father found it out timely. He took her to the hospital and her life was saved. Soon after, he met In-jun, who had asked her out that night. Without regret, he spoke in a masterful manner. That she allowed him and they both volunteered. They planned to make love somewhere roadside. But they came to the construction site instead to make sure no one see it. They even drew lots to touch her in turns. In-jun boasted to Seola's father that 2 of his older friends made it first in different positions. He took the 3rd turn. Though Seola went under, she tried hard to resist. In-jun regretted that he was too drunk to make love to her. He told it with a very blunt attitude without any remorse. The father scolded In-jun, "You're insane." In-jun replied with a laugh, "You're her father. You can't know how good it is with her." Losing temper, the father punched In-jun. Life is unfair. It's Seola's father was on remand for striking a minor. Ridiculously, the recording of In-jun's testimony was considered a counterfeit testament. He was believed to be forced to say it could not be used at the trial. Eun-suk was in charge of the case. She is a juvenile court judge. After reading the documents and seeing In-jun's photo and name, she suddenly trembled all over and failed to control her emotions. She then fell to the floor in a faint. Turns out she lost her child because of these two evils' pranks. After the fabled case ended, Eun-suk set herself to be a juvenile court judge. She spends her life to bring those devil incarnate to light and justice to the victims. After all these years of trying, now that she has achieved what she wanted, so she would not be easy on the one who took her son's life. After regaining consciousness, she immediately went to court to take In-jun's testimony. He claimed that he only followed the orders of 2 other guys. They started out to drink for fun without any other purpose. Furthermore, he didn't want to do it to Seola. He tried his best to stop the older friends, but they laced into him, so that he walked around the site waiting for them. According to the results, the court announced that only 2 older guys' DNA was collected from Seola's body, and they also admitted their crimes. At that time, they were already 14. A few days later, the court would investigate this case following the law on juvenile crimes. However, Eun-suk didn't buy into the test result. She intended to silently reinvestigate the case. Her ex-husband came to see her all of a sudden. She thought he would give her a hand. Unexpectedly, he used the principles to prevent her from reinvestigating the case, because she is the mother of the victim mentioned earlier. Eun-suk asked him, Do you have the right to shove your nose into my affairs? They had nothing to do with each other for so long. He said he was also a father. Are you planning to take vengeance on him? It means nothing now. Let bygones be bygones or else you'll get hurt. Hoon-suk calmly replied, I don't care. Wait and see how I'll punish In-jun with law. 3 days later, the first trial took place. Hoon-suk questioned In-jun instead of the suspects. Adding to his previous testimony, he said that he was forced to help the older guys do dirty things. His lawyer presented several photos of the injuries on his body as evidence, and added that this case inherently stemmed from an unfair power relationship. He met Dong Jae-eun and Jae-soo at school, where they ordered him to buy cigarettes and liquor for a long time. They wouldn't beat him as long as he obeyed. Clever Hoon-suk realized the conflict between In-jun's before and after testimony. If he was that scared of the older ones and at their beck and call, why did he dare to dissuade them on the night of the case? Did his conscience revolt at the crime? In-jun was heart sank. Hoon-suk kept questioning. Why did he dare to answer back that time? His lawyer stood up and defended him. In-jun was indeed scared of the older guys threatening in blows. However, In-jun interrupted her and spoke himself. That is unacceptable. They can't do it to a girl. It is a sensational crime. Other people might be fooled by his naive look. As Hoon-suk knows this jerk well, she gave him one last chance to tell the truth, or else she would be hard on him. Yet, he stubbornly denied it. Hoon-suk then appealed for a witness to the incident. Who was the officer in this case? The two met 3 days ago. Hoon-suk believed there were another evidence aside from the guy's DNA. That's why she came to the crime scene at midnight and found that the contractor parked his car there every night. She also got the video filming what happened from his black box, in which all of them got drunk and spiked Seola's drink. When she was legless, they all laughed scurrilously, got ready for their crime. What they did was clearly filmed by the black box. The truth is that all 3 of them included In-jun taking turn to abuse Seola. Moreover, In-jun did it on his own initiative, not under duress. He could no longer deny it. His lawyer kept defending him by questioning the video's authenticity. The policeman then showed that its authenticity was checked by the court's forensics department. The video from the black box was verified with no trace of forgery. In-jun was recognized as a partaker in guilt due to making false declarations, and he would be reinvestigated under the law on juvenile crime. Furthermore, the investigation process would be completed within a week and a sentencing hearing would be held. Before the hearing, Tae-ju came with a startled look on his face. He found a new clue from another case showing another accomplice named Do-hyun. Hoon-suk rolled her eyes, because Do-hyun is one of the 2 who harmed her son. These 2 committed a crime together again this time. Taking this opportunity, she would make them pay for what they did 5 years ago. A woman from out of nowhere appeared and slapped Hoon-suk. I warned you that I would find you no matter what. You can't hide for the rest of your life. That woman is mother of Hoon-suk's ex-husband. She blamed Hoon-suk for her grandson's death because Hoon-suk refused to be a housewife. The woman considered Hoon-suk someone destroying her son, as she appeared when he was going to remarry. Hoon-suk left to stay away from the perverse and annoying old woman. Sitting in a corner, she still heard the old woman's abusive words. Her heart was torn apart. She was still obsessed by her son's departure from life. Her house was empty without vitality. A tongue has no bones, but it is strong enough to hurt someone. She has suffered a pain for 5 years, which came from a sound-like-fun reason. In the eyes of those crazy juvenile, this case was none other than a prank. The old woman's uproar told everyone in the court about the case 5 years ago. Judge Gwenhee also heard about it and realized she was the one who declared the 2 evils not guilty. However, she still thought her judgment was not wrong. Other magistrates would also do the same. Hoon-suk asked her what purpose the law served. Laws were made to protect victims or perpetrators. If Gwenhee had given them a punishment instead of making a short judgment, this tragedy would not have happened. Learning no lesson from the past case, they took it for granted that they were truly innocent. Realizing how easy the law is, they will harm more people. Gun-hee was holding her hand tightly. She knew Eun-suk's words were right, but she didn't want to admit her fault. As Eun-suk is the mother of the victim in the past case, Gun-hee wanted her to stand down this case. Eun-suk wouldn't stop. Looking at Seola, she remembered her son. She would not allow the same judgment to happen again. Luckily, Tae-ju found new clues. From another case of violation, he collected information from a victim of Do Ji-yeon. She was pregnant. According to her, In-jun and Do Ji-yeon found a criminal gang, controlling many misguided girls and acting to dupe and blackmail them at cheap motels. Ill news spread apace. They even extort money from peddlers who violated young women. Their artifice was ever victorious, which helped them earn lots of money. Some girls even joined their gang for money. Later, those girls recognized that they were abused to make money without being paid. Their life was threatened when trying to leave the gang. That's why they didn't dare to denounce the gang in spite of their indignation. This girl escaped when In-jun was under arrest. Grasping the realities of the situation, Eun-suk acted quickly by meeting up with the girls who were under the gang's thumb. She got the evidence of their worst crimes. Many girls failed to escape from them. The jerks captured and took turn to violate them. More than that, they even filmed it. Those girls were forced to sell themselves in illegal trade online. The whole gang was very inhuman. Thanks to the girls, Eun-suk found the gang's den. She was about to take all the videos from their computers when nobody was there. "Who are you?" A guy appeared behind Eun-suk. "Are you a cop?" he asked with a grin. Eun-suk realized Do-hyun. Do-hyun's smile faded. He yelled at Eun-suk and tried to beat her, angrily questioning her how much those videos cost. He gave her a slap, without being sorry for hitting a woman who was at his mother's age. Eun-suk slowly stood up and wondered why he didn't make a decent living after receiving a chance. At least, one of them should have become a good person. Eun-suk couldn't get why he was living like a jerk. Do-hyun didn't care about the devastated woman. "Don't lecture me, old woman." He then stabbed on her shoulder with a knife. Before he could give her another stab, Eun-suk threw a brick at his head. Eun-suk saw one of Seola's shoes which wasn't found at the scene. Do-hyun was really a partaker in the guilt. That was a collection of shoes. Each of them referred to the girls who were harmed. Do-hyun admitted to be there with the other guys. He challenged Eun-suk even when she already knew the truth. Then he was about to take her life, ensuring she would be silent forever. At that precise moment, he heard the police siren. Actually, Eun-suk contacted the policeman who was in charge of the case in advance. When Do-hyun tried to run away, he was captured by the policeman. All the evidence of their crimes were collected, covered in blood, but Eun-suk came to the court instead of the hospital. She used her own injured body to change Gun-hee's judgment. She also told Gun-hee all about their crimes, about how they abused the girls to make money. Seeing how Eun-suk was in pain, Gun-hee asked her to leave. She wished Eun-suk would go to the hospital before the emergency. But Eun-suk bore the pain and gave Gun-hee an earnest gaze. Gun-hee, who always maintained her stand, was moved by that. A week later, the trial was held. The malicious female lawyer still defended In-jun by claiming that In-jun's DNA wasn't found, which meant he didn't commit an offense. She even showed a forged certificate of merit and told that In-jun was a good student who always helped people around, that the others threatened him not to tell anyone what really happened. She also proved her point with photos of the bruises on his body. It was the same for Do-hyun. They both blamed the younger friends, bringing a charge against them. The lawyer obviously studied Gun-hee's past trials before this, so she knew Gun-hee always heard a case shortly. These guys would be declared innocent, she believed. Gun-hee remembered Eun-suk's words. The other two of the gang heard the recording of the trial. Tae-ju successfully incited them to betray the older ones, based on the collected evidences. Jae-soo and Dong Jae-un would be declared the culprits and sentenced to 10 years in prison if they made honest declarations. partial verdict will reduce the punishment of their guilty. Jiang-su and Dong Jiayun could do nothing but told the truth. Dong Jiayun confirmed that Du Hyun commanded them to do all those. He said Du Hyun beat them up when they didn't listen to him. Dong Jiayun was tortured by Du Hyun. Du Hyun fed up hearing the confession. So did In June. Seeing the situation, the lawyer objected it. She considered it one-sided confession. No direct evidence could prove it. Unpredictably, these two juniors secretly held the evidences after each mission and kept the copies in an USB. Gun-hee presented the evidences in front of all. Du Hyun and In June were speechless with that. Looking at each photo, Du Hyun remembered how they violated the girls. They took photo of their own crimes with smiles. Seeing it, the victim's family cried bitterly. Still, Du Hyun didn't feel sorry at all. Meanwhile, In June was collapsed as he knew misfortune was visiting them. He admitted that it was Du Hyun who made him to everything. Du Hyun denied it all. As a result, they fought each other at the court. Their violence interrupted the interrogation. They denounced the crimes of one another. Well, nothing more for the judge to do, as they both confessed their crimes. Gun-hee was no longer easy on them. She let Seola follow the trial outside of the courtroom. End of this trial. Seola didn't want to take a stand at first. As for her, there was no reason to keep her life going on. She thought of taking her own life so many times. Eun-suk persuaded Seola. The shameful ones are the culprits, including In June, Du Hyun, and the internet scum. They aren't deserve forgiveness. When the victims harm themselves, the culprits will be more imperious. Only when Seola could take a stand, she would be able to hold her head high and continue her life. Finally, Seola bravely raised her voice. She begged them to get her old life back. The little girl plucked up her courage to speak. As soon as the words left her mouth, she couldn't stop crying. Everyone in the courtroom choked by tears hearing her sobs. Except the two culprits. In June and Du Hyun ended up with 20 years in prison. It was a good sentence, though it had been hard to prove them guilty. Yet, the pain caused by them will not disappear. The victims live with such a pain for their whole life. Eun-suk is an example of an empty soul for all those years. Though the ones who took her son's life were punished, memories of her son buried deep in her psyche. Touching her late son's items, her emotions seemed to be released. She cried out loud with her broken heart. Admiring her late son's photos, Eun-suk brought all those items to the columbarium. She even burned all the photos for her son in heaven. Her life shall continue. After this, she seems to be free. And she only focused on juvenile criminal cases. The day after, she was commissioned to try a case that shocked the whole nation. A 13-year-old boy took an 8-year-old one into his home. After taking the little boy's life, he split up the body and moved it to the rooftop at night. Strangely, he came to the police station and confessed his crime. The policeman was stunned. The boy claimed that he did it all alone with this bloody axe. Following his descriptions, the police found the body on the rooftop and immediately arrested the culprit. The boy named Song-woo. Living in the same neighborhood with the 8-year-old victim, they had never met before. No hatred between them. Typical case of intentionally committing a crime. The case circulated quickly, drawing public attention. As Song-woo was under 14, according to South Korea's Youth Protection Act, he would not be subject to criminal punishment. The highest punishment is 2 years in the juvenile hall. Together, people appealed the authorities to abrogate the Youth Protection Act. They wanted an eye for an eye. Reading the case records at night, Eun-suk knew Song-woo dropped school. And he had many previous convictions. Living with a single parent and suffering from schizophrenia, he had to take medicine to reduce the symptoms. His disease was a potential reason to help him escape punishment. Eun-suk indeed assumed correctly. According to Song-woo, on that day, his disease recurred without warning, getting him into a panic. At that time, the little boy appeared and borrowed his phone. Song-woo tried to pull himself together and took the little boy home. The 8-year-old boy was absorbed in toys and stayed there for a long time. He even insisted on Song-woo playing with him. Getting annoyed, Song-woo lost himself and harmed the little boy. Song-woo grabbed the boy. He played hide and seek with the little boy, asking him to stay still until he was found. "I won't forgive you if you get out," Song-woo told the little boy. The frightened boy hid under the bed, yet he was still found by Song-woo. Song-woo then committed a crime after enjoying the game. He told about it with joy, causing everyone to feel intense disgust. Knowing well that he was not at the age of criminal responsibility, he acted with defying manners. Showing no signs of remorse or fear, he aroused everyone's indignation. Song-woo's mother appeared during the break not for saying sorry. She directly asked for a parole as stated in the Youth Protection Act. The mother spoiled her child. Eun-suk demanded her to apologize to the victim's family first. The victim's mother came to the court later. Her bitter tears gained Eun-suk's sympathy. She only wanted the culprit to be subjected to judgment, so that she gave Eun-suk her son's favorite food. She knew the judges were not allowed to take gifts. Eun-suk carefully took every single bite. She was weighed down by heavy responsibilities. She stayed up all night studying the records. The next day, Song-woo faced the judge's questions. He seemed to get impatient since he wanted to escape punishment quickly by showing the case record to prove that he had been taken worse. Song-woo believed he would be declared innocent thanks to his disease and age. Eun-suk smirked at his case record and said, "You are not the culprit, am I right?" She figured out something wrong last night. Schizoaffective disorder's symptoms are hallucinations and delusions. He would not be able to do complex matters alone. People with this kind of disorder have a lack of attention and focus. For example, what to do after committing a crime. The crime scene was all cleaned with no signs of traces. Even adults couldn't do it properly. Could a minor get rid of someone and clear the crime scene in such an easy way? That means there was someone else who was the actual culprit. The 14-year-old Song-woo was too arrogant. Eun-suk was sure that he confessed it to cover his accomplice. It was not only her speculation. She already checked the camera in the elevator. They discovered traces of a third person. It was a female student named Yi-eun. Song-woo immediately lost his temper and yelled, "It's not her. She has nothing to do with this." Song-woo's reaction has affirmed Eun-suk's speculation. The court staff collected the call history between them as evidence. Before the crime happened, he contacted Yi-eun. Song-woo was about to snatch the photo, despite he never mentioned her. The truth was still eventually revealed. After Song-woo was under key, Tae-ju came to the police station to check CCTV. In front of the police station before his confession, Song-woo directed his eyes in one direction, and Yi-eun was the one who was on that way. To catch her, he met her old friend first. She was told to be at an overnight internet cafe every night. Hearing so, Eun-suk was on the way there at night. However, Song-woo's mother headed off her car. She offered her life to get her son released. Pitiful people are hateful sometimes. Eun-suk's job means nothing if a culprit can escape thanks to pleas. Enough talking, she decisively drove her car away. Eun-suk did find Yi-eun at the internet cafe. She also told Yi-eun who she was. Yi-eun agreed to go with Eun-suk at first. When Eun-suk was off her guard, Yi-eun tried her best to run away, but she failed to escape. Yi-eun was pursued into a blind alley. Eun-suk stared at her with cold eyes. Her eyes were full of hate. Irresponsible parents make misguided minors. Facing Eun-suk's sharp questions, Yi-eun made herself look innocent and said nothing, because her lawyer asked her to use the tutelary authority. So she remained silent even when she saw the call history. Yi-eun was indeed at the crime scene despite her denial. Considering Yi-eun a dangerous suspect, Eun-suk required the police to put her in temporary detention. Yi-eun's lawyer coped with that in a short time. The next day, she paid reporters to write articles about Judge Eun-suk threatened and captured a little innocent female minor and accused her of violating the process of investigation, as well as her prejudice against juvenile delinquents. Eun-suk was said to be an unsuitable juvenile judge. Reading the news, the head of the juvenile court flew into a rage. Instead of getting panicky, Eun-suk even strongly fired back. The court shall, at least, reveal the truth. Isn't it the missions of people like them? What if those juvenile delinquents cannot respect the law's value after the trials? What should the executives do? Who will take responsibilities if those minors get worse and hurt more people? Eun-suk determined to let them know how scary the law is. Juvenile delinquents need to know what price to pay for hurting people. If the parents care for their children, they should have cooperated with the court. That is why Eun-suk there. She asked the head what she did wrong as a judge. What wrong did she do? The head was numbed with her legitimate questions. He knew she was right, but he didn't want the court to forbear from ill fame. It might crack the credit of the Department of Justice. To people, fair makes prestige. And prestige is from fair judgments, not public opinion. Eun-suk announced that she would not be easy on any juvenile delinquents. She then told Tae-ju to visit Song-woo's mother. He let her know about the third person at the crime scene. The judge would be lenient if she could persuade him to confess it. Song-woo's mother realized Yi-eun at first sight. For her son, she agreed despite her little reliance in Tae-ju. The trial was held soon after. Song-woo was no longer perverse and grandiloquent. At the court, Song-woo admitted to receive Yi-eun's orders. That day, Yi-eun took the little boy to Song-woo's home. It was Yi-eun who handled the little boy. Song-woo only let her do it in his house. He had no idea that she wanted to take the boy's life. Terrifying, Song-woo could not believe it. He yelled at her, "You're insane." He didn't know what to. Yi-eun was sure that they could continue their normal life. Yi-eun did not expect that Song-woo would have betrayed her. The lawyer had made inquiries beforehand, remaining her original point. She had a doctor to confirm Yi-eun a paranoid. To be more precise, she eluded herself a victim. And she did not control her words. Even a minor incident could recur her disease and she would lost control of emotions. She might harm people in her anger. It was hard to verify her motive. If Yi-eun committed a crime under an illusion, there was no way to sentence her. Yet, there was another doubt, which was her paranoid syndrome and Song-woo's schizoaffective disorder. Both share a common that they were unable to clear the scene. Who did all those things then? Yi-eun said it was Song-woo who made her do so. He stood outside the bathroom guiding her how to handle the victim and destroy the traces of crime. She came up to the rooftop and left the bag there, under the threat of Song-woo. Song-woo then screamed, "You did it all by yourself." She said they would not be seen on the CCTV. They passed the buck to each other. Mother of the victim shouted, shutting their mouths. She, with full-off pain, begged them to stop. No matter what syndrome or disorder they had. It didn't matter to her. As for the victim's parents, she just knew that her son was taken to their home. Her son left the world in pain without her by his side. She could not gulp back her tears. Then she required all the judges at the court to stop the same incident from occurring and punish them severely. Everyone there was silent, only her sobs heard. The chief judge announced a break. After discussing with his colleagues, the chief judge decided to be at Eun-suk's discretion. The judge sentenced Yi-eun to 20 years in prison. Song-woo would be sent to a reform school for 2 years. Yi-eun requested for another judgment with a loud voice. She wondered why 20 years then went wild. With his head downwards, Song-woo seemed to be seized with compunction. Everyone knew that children like Yi-eun would resist re-education. Despite 20 years in prison, she might still be a bad person in the future. This is also a grudging aspect of the law. At least, people at the court carried out their duties. Although it is impossible to change the nature of youth criminals, we should not pass the buck to the law. If parents had educated their children properly, these heartbreaking tragedies would not have happened. Until the end of the trial, Yi-eun's parents never showed up. We can tell what type of parents they are. Without parents' strict upbringing, their children will never change. After the trial, Song-woo's mother wondered why the judge wasn't lenient. She wanted her son to be free right away. Couldn't stand her attitude. Eun-suk told her that if she refused the lightest sentence, she could lodge an appeal. At that time, Eun-suk would consider whether to sentence him to prison. Eun-suk wondered if she could feel deeply pain of parents who's lost their children. What did she do for Song-woo when he was 9? The victim lost his life at 9 and his mother could never see him again. It was her son who caused it. Eun-suk's words touched Song-woo's mother. Not until seeing blood on the floor that she could feel such a pain. Committed crime cannot be erased off. Too late to regret. The crime that shocked the whole nation ended. It does not mean everything ends. Do those juvenile delinquents really feel deeply sorry for their crime? Will they commit crimes again during the re-education period? No one can guarantee this. The next day, the court staff received an inform against a reformatory. The manager was doubted to misappropriate funds and abuse the minors. After receiving this news, Eun-suk and Tae-ju came to the reformatory to check it out. They questioned the girls in turn. Two of those girls got scared. They each were abused in different ways. For example, the manager fed them with stale rice and saved good meals to her own daughter. When one of them refused to eat, she threw the bowl away and said, "You do not deserve any food or a right to pick and choose." She threatened to leave them with no food. The girl had to bow her head and apologize to the manager. She promised to be nice and begged for food. The manager asked her back, "You are already full. Back to your room and rest." Though the little girl addressed her fault with tears, the manager did not allow her to cry as tears brought bad luck. If she could not stop crying, the manager would have been hard on her. Not just that, they were brought to the local houses to do chores for money, and they would be beaten if they resisted. One of them was still in hospital as her bone was cracked. Though they were there for a re-education, it was too harsh on them. Eun-suk and Tae-ju spent all night to examine the books. They quickly found evidence that the manager misappropriated funds. The next day, they questioned her. She told an entirely different story. So far, she had always taken good care of them, yet those girls kept asking for cigarette during meals. When she refused, they cursed at her and smashed the dishes. She asked them what they were going to do, wondering whether they respect the food. A spiteful girl thought she meant they did not deserve food or a right to pick and choose. The manager demanded them not to go beyond nor go beyond the limit. That girl dropped her meal, kicked the chair and left. Not until then did she say, "You do not deserve the meal." At that time, Seonja's daughter wondered why they made a noise early in the morning. The girls mimicked her and cracked up. The manager could only clear the food on the floor. There was a reason why she asked them to do chores. When the reformatory was newly built, local people strongly opposed it. They did not want the juvenile delinquents to live in their neighborhood. To change people's mind, she asked the girls to help them do chores. Furthermore, she held collective activities to erase their prejudices. A leopard can't change its spots. They teamed up to bully those who tried hard to change in a better way. And they even broke a girl's leg. To verify the manager's story, Eun-suk gathered the girls and called the hospital. Indeed, delinquents cannot be converted by means of righteousness and generosity. Juvenile delinquents shall be strictly punished. That would make them scared of law. Eun-suk then visited the injured girl. She said the manager used the funds to pay her hospital fee. She still had a positive thought of juvenile delinquents. If people knew about this, they would be punished by law again. That is why the manager misappropriated funds. The little girl promised to work hard and repay the funds after being discharged. Also, she begged Eun-suk not to close the reformatory. As for her, that place was like her home and the manager was like her mom. There, she felt being loved. When someone passed food to her bowl, she told herself to live a decent life after leaving the reformatory. And her new goal of life was to repay the manager's favor. Eun-suk realized that she misunderstood the manager. Turning back to the reformatory, Eun-suk saw a mess there. It seemed to be a fight. She did not see the manager and the juvenile delinquents. Only the manager's daughter stayed. Eun-suk asked the girl what happened earlier. She said her mother was taken to the hospital in an ambulance. The manager fainted when her reformatory was forced to close. Ariam was wound up to a white rage. She believed that those juvenile delinquents tried to destroy her mother. They were also the reason why Ariam could not see her father. Her mother told her that her father was working abroad. That was a lie since her parents got a divorce long ago. It was because her mother could not give up on this place. All the credit was her ridiculous reformatory and the bad girls. A few days ago her younger sister was taken to the hospital due to a stomachache. Instead of picking up her younger sister, feeding the girls was more important than her sick daughter in hospital. Seonja put them above her own daughters. Eun-suk realized that those juvenile delinquents did not make that call. It was Ariam who did it to close the reformatory. Luckily, the manager was not in danger. Meanwhile, the juvenile delinquents ran away together. Escaping from the tie, the seeds of criminal behavior in them were growing. Woonsuk and Taeju came to the police station to press charges. They separated into groups and searched for the escaping girls. A girl contacted the police out of the blue. That was one of the escaping girls. She said Young-na made them sell their bodies for money. However, Young-na grabbed her before she could finish the call. Woonsuk immediately took an action, yet, the girl was locked in the room. Young-na was on the watch in front of the motel. As soon as the poor girl was about to run, a man came and locked the door with a chain. She wondered why he locked the door. He said many girls flew with his money before he could do anything. While he was bathing, she tried to find the key in his bag. Yet, she almost screamed. His bag and wallet were all empty. She tried to unlock his phone to call the police. The man already finished bathing and started harming her. He thought she was playing a nasty trick on him, so he hit her up. Also, he accused her of trying to deceive him. At that moment, a policeman knocked the door and tried to talk from outside. "I'm an officer. Please associate with me." Hearing the strange sound, the officer broke the door to get in. The man was caught before he could jump out of the window. All the others girls were found except Young-na. During the interrogation, the officers were told that Ariam knew Young-na really cared for her mother. She lied to Young-na that her mother was sick enough to die. Woonsuk and the manager visited Young-na's mother. They found Young-na sitting on the stairs. There was blood on her body and she looked unwell. She really came for her mother last night, yet her mother was good and happy with her new boyfriend. Furthermore, Young-na's mother was bored of her. As Young-na's parents divorced each other when she was small, being abandoned by her mother, she felt lack of love. That's why she was envy of children living with their parents' love. The mother's attitude turned her love into hate. She frantically banged on the door to make her mom get out. A strange man opened the door and asked who she was. Young-na wanted to get in her home, but he thought she was a crazy girl. The mother turned a blind eye when her daughter was hit by her boyfriend. Children with mental damage are prone to hurt themselves, commit a crime, or join the thugs. They might turn themselves into criminals. They actually know they are up to no good, but they still do it, as they believe their family will be affected when they hurt themselves. Ariam and those girls are the same. Their purpose is very simple. They just want their parents' attention. Their parents might care if they are hurt, but it is not as they wanted it to be. In fact, most criminal acts stem from family circumstances. The juvenile court and reformatory could partly help. The main cause of juvenile crime is the lack of parents' love. Yet, this cause is hard to solve. Parents, who are failures, are powerless to educate their children. Many adults do not know how to love their kids. Woonsuk hoped the manager would learn a lesson from this, or else she would be regretful when her daughter also became a juvenile delinquent. After getting recovered, the manager came home with her daughter. She said she was tired, so she wanted Ariam to hug her. Happily, Ariam pretended to be sulky. Mother and daughter then got each other well and deepened their relationship. After a discuss during the break at the court, they decided to remain the reformatory. However, they should have handled the bully gang and Young-na's guilt. The next day, all of them gathered around to receive the sentence. They would be sent to stricter youth recovery centers. But this time, their parents would be re-educated together with them, especially Young-na's parents. Sitting all together behind, all the guardians bowed their heads. They seemed to be very ashamed. Were they ashamed of their children or their failure in upbringing? Hard to say, but most of them had no concept of shame. The verdict was made. At the same time, the tribunal president was talking to the head of juvenile court. Recently, there was an exam cheating case at a high school. The thing was that the students there were rich kids. Some of them were children of high-rank politicians from different ministries. This large-scale case was tough to solve. The tribunal president gave Chief Judge Kang full liberty to act. Kang happily undertook that task. After this case, the tribunal president would resign to become a politician. He has a dream of reforming the law, to make the juvenile delinquents to face the criminal law. To make his dream come true, he must become a member of parliament, and this would be his final case. Chief Judge Khan was very confident. As soon as he got out, he received a call from an officer. His son was too scared to open the door. Turns out his son also joined the exam cheating. Thinking of his promise to the tribunal president, he came home in anger. Luckily, the police was not there to ask about the exam cheating. They were investigating the nearby traffic accident. Kang angrily smashed things. He had warned his wife and son to stay away from the exam cheating. His wife admitted that they involved just once. There were many people also involved. It would be okay because only the principal had the list of the concerned. The whole society was caring about this. Kang knew it was not that simple. If they were exposed, his career and his son's future would be over. He questioned his son in anger. Kang once warned his son not to do such a risky thing. Why didn't he listen? He gave up on his son as he had no way to save him. Not until then did the mother recognize how serious it was. She started screaming, blaming herself for destroying her family's future. Next day, the exam paper leak case was on the news. The news also disclosed Mr. Kang's assumption of jurisdiction. To protect his father's prestige, he came to the police station for confessing. Late at night, while Kang was having a meal with a member of parliament, he received a phone call from the police station. Shinwoo was severely injured in the crash when crossing the road. Outside of the emergency room, Shinwoo's mother crying her eyes out. Kang's mind went blank, remembering the moment he gave up on his son. His wife shifted the blame on him. Kang always had a poor opinion of Shinwoo and even compared him to his younger brother. Because Shinwoo had a weak standard of knowledge, Kang's embarrassment stressed Shinwoo out. To gain his father's recognition, Shinwoo studied so hard every day, yet his studying result did not improve, and son of a judge like him was asked to join the exam leak. That was his only mistake, which made him feel very bad. Finally, he withdrew. In the last, he was still a good boy. Kang had never known about it. He eventually addressed his faults. And then he withdrew from the elections. The member of parliament did not agree. As for Korean politicians, such an incident was not a problem. If he withdrew, he would be under siege from the press. He was asked to solve it quickly. Afterwards, Mr. Kang met the teaching director. In order to demand him to deny it during the trial, the teaching director did not understand it at first. On the day of the trial, he got it when he knew Kang was the judge. The school and students denied the charge. Even the parents thought an exam paper leak was something normal. A parent explained that, in the past, hard-working students could be accepted to Seoul University. In this day and age, hard studying was never enough. Parents paid a lot for postgraduate to help their children with better grades. Students need to do tons of exams at school. Eun-suk was surprised by that. If so, why did they join the exam paper leak case? The mother kept explaining. That was good for their children, especially the university entrance exam. If they refused the chance, the others would take it though. Despite a little gap in grades, it would be a big difference in ranking. She emphasized that the leak did not mean the students were lazy studying. They just needed more time for other subjects. To prepare the best for the university entrance exam. Her words stunned everyone at the court. It was so ridiculous when the mother asked the judge when the trial ended. As her son needed to go to an extra class, they have not addressed their mistake at all. Judge Kang soon after ended the trial and let all the witness go. A while later, Eun-suk saw Mr. Kang to ask him. His angry reaction surprised her. He warned her to know her place and be mindful of her duties. If she did not stop, he would fire her. Eun-suk smelled something fishy. There must be something in the back of it. A few days later, Eun-suk continued trying the case. A boy said he heard the principal talking to someone on the phone. There were a total of 24 students involved in this case. The names of 3 were wiped out, so he did not know who they were. Eun-suk thought those students just wanted to reduce the studies burden. As the list even included excellent students. The three secret ones must be children of powerful people whom Kang had regard for. Or maybe they dropped out of it in midstream. After a while of searching, Eun-suk suspected 6 students. She stopped her eyes at a student's profile. That was Shin-woo, son of Chief Judge Kang. Her deductions seemed to be right, yet she had no proof. Let's tune in for the third trial. Chief Judge Kang wanted to speed up the process. He rejected all the witnesses. The prosecutor said they were all ready. No reason to reject them. Mr. Kang gave a firm refusal of it. Eun-suk gave him an uncomfortable gaze. She announced a temporary halt so the council could discuss again. Everyone at the trial was extremely surprised. Mr. Kang shouted at Eun-suk with anger. Because she went beyond her power. Eun-suk fearlessly mentioned Shin-woo, which startled Mr. Kang. Mr. Kang still said her speculations were not in evidence. He supposed that she was trying to stitch up his son, and Mr. Kang was ready to make a counterattack if she didn't stop. He then left in quiet. It was thought to be over soon. The day after, when he entered the room, he was amazed by the presence of Eun-suk and the tribunal president. Eun-suk did report it to the tribunal president. Chief Judge blamed Eun-suk for trying to overthrow him. Anticipating this behavior, Eun-suk showed the evidence, shutting Kang's mouth. Yesterday, Eun-suk visited Shin-woo as soon as he woke up. He said he went to the court to confess on that day. His confession might affect his father. It was so ashamed if his father lost his job because of him. He didn't want that to happen, and after thinking for a while, to get rid of the misfortune on his family, he thought the best way was to take his own life. Eun-suk persuaded him with her sympathy. We all make mistakes. It is important to acknowledge our faults, and how to correct them. Eun-suk's advice worked and Shin-woo admitted everything. Returned to the judge's office. Eun-suk showed everyone the evidence. Mr. Kang had no more words to say. The tribunal president gave Kang 1 day to resign from office. By this, we could tell Chief Judge Kang was not a bad guy. His goal was to be a politician who could reform law on juvenile crimes. He almost went the wrong to do justice. This was typical utilitarianism, and whether it was right or wrong, it would be based on the opposite side of idealism. Speaking of the upshot of idealism in this case, a man, who was potential to develop justice, was forced to resign. It made people suspicious of the court's prestige. As a result, adjudicature was in a deadlock. If one person must be way too perfect, the others should review themselves. If people in society put their self-interest above all, no one will dare to speak up for justice. It is true that justice will eventually prevail. Every regime requires good and qualified people work together. It will bring a greater effect along with that. But then, a qualified man like Mr. Kang had to entrust Kang Eun-suk with his ideal of reforming law. While the final trial was taking place, he quietly left and Tae-ju saw him out. Tae-ju gave him a photo. He was a juvenile delinquent. Mr. Kang did help him and many minors. He told Kang about the first days he came into office. Mr. Kang said he realized Tae-ju at first sight. He was so grateful when Tae-ju became a good man. Tae-ju bent down and laced up Mr. Kang's shoes, like the way Kang laced his shoes up when he was a juvenile delinquent years ago. Tae-ju never forgot that image of Mr. Kang. He always remembered Mr. Kang's kindness to him. They bid farewell to each other. Mr. Kang reminded Tae-ju of following the path of justice, being as brave as Eun-suk, and not being wrong like him. He turned away and left as soon as finishing. Tae-ju bowed to him as a farewell, showing his respect to Mr. Kang. Mr. Kang left a letter to Eun-suk, in which he said that he actually didn't hate her, he just shouted in anger. What she did and said was right and fair. He hoped she would be an elite judge who brought victims justice and punished criminals, as well as continued his half-done mission, which was to reform the laws on juvenile crimes. God will decide the results. The juvenile justice system in Korea was not perfect enough. The leniency of the laws so far will be equivalent to tolerating the behavior of criminals, making them more dangerous. Minors are not yet aware of their own behavior. They are easily influenced by external circumstances. Same as polluted ponds, they could not pure themselves. If society cannot punish them, we must resort to the law, and Unsuk will be a good judge who uses justice and righteousness to do that. This is the end of the series. It does not take your time to hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching. See you next time.